Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. These are the stories of those who have received, given, and who are waiting for the gift of life, organ transplantation. Now here's your host and heart and kidney recipient, BJ Odom.
Welcome to the Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast, where we explore the extraordinary world of organ transplantation. Each week we share inspiring stories and introduce you to remarkable individuals sharing their own transplant stories. Be sure to support the podcast by leaving a 5-star review and subscribing on your preferred podcast platform. Have a transplant story yourself or comments about the show? Just email us, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to connect with us on Facebook, Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. This is BJ Odom. You know, the guy with more parts than a chicken nugget? My new memoir is packed with laughs, heart, and the unbelievable true story of survival you've heard me talk about right here on the Gift of Life podcast. Get yours today, More Parts Than a Chicken Nugget, which is available on Amazon. As we welcome you to episode 110. Today, we're sharing another powerful story of hope, resilience, and second chances. Our guest, Leah Holverson, whose journey began with strange symptoms that at first seemed like nothing serious, until life took an unexpected turn and she learned a heart transplant was in her future. Though fear, uncertainty, and the support of family, friends, and incredible doctors, Leah received the ultimate gift of life. Her story is one that will inspire everyone facing challenges and reminding us all the incredible power of organ donation. We'll talk with Leah coming up next. Leah, I do want to thank you and welcome you to the podcast. As we get started, if you would, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am 40, I'll be 46 in August. I grew up actually in Canada, and I came to Northwest Iowa to come to college, to a college affiliated with our church. And I ended up never leaving. I met my husband not at college, but in the community. And I now have been here longer, lived in the U.S. longer than I have in Canada. And it's hard being 10 hours away from family, but I think this whole journey of mine, my healthcare journey, has reminded me of why I'm here. And, we are only about 3.5-4 hours away from Rochester. And so, just the access to that expertise and stuff has definitely reminded me that God put me where I needed to be. And just very thankful for that.
And I think he does that to a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. We have 2 girls, 2 daughters. We have a junior in high school that's pretty heavily involved in sports. And so that's where we're spending a lot of our time now. And then an oldest daughter that's going to turn 21 here in May, and she's graduated from Iowa State and already working. And we are going to be able to see her get married in August, the end of August. So we're pretty excited about that.
Well, congratulations.
And my husband, we've been married. We'll be married, we'll be married 25 years next year. But he's been right there alongside of me, and good stuff.
So we're going to talk a little bit about your transplant. And I always tell people, every story starts as a beginning. And thank goodness everybody so far on this show hasn't seen the ending of their story yet. But let's just get started at the very beginning. How did everything start with you, and how did you get into the world of transplants?
Yeah, it was pretty bizarre. It took quite a while to kind of figure it out. I have a timeline ahead in front of me just because it's hard for me sometimes to remember all the things. But in September of 2021, it was just kind of after supper one night. I had an episode similar to like a seizure. I kind of got up and I told my husband after supper, I said, I don't feel good at all. And our bedroom's right off the kitchen, and I laid down, and he came in and he said, like, my neck and my lips and my chest were blue, like I was, not getting enough oxygen. I was conscious. I didn't completely pass out, but yeah, it was definitely an event of some sort. And so we went to the emergency room and we went through all the things. And I wore a Holter monitor for a few days, and honestly, nothing really came from that. And it just kind of, obviously it was a little disturbing, but we kind of went through all the things and everything checked out fine according to who I had seen. So then nothing really happened until the following July. So almost 9 months later, we were eating at a local restaurant and just kind of got up and actually I felt it at the restaurant. And the restaurant, you had to walk. We were out on the patio, and I knew that if we left, we'd have to walk all the way through the inside dining part. And I knew I couldn't do that at that moment. Like I was just dizzy, and it just was kind of similar to that seizure situation again. And so we kind of sat there for a while, probably longer than what we could. And so I could navigate out of the restaurant and not draw a lot of attention. And I literally got to my vehicle and I laid down in the back, and it was just awful again. And then I had several of those a couple. I had another one on the 4th of July at a friend's, the 4th of July party. And then I doctored, and on middle of July of 22, they did put a Xylo patch heart monitor on me. And that I was scheduled to go on vacation back up to my folks, and I told them, I said, I'm not going to go swimming, I'm not going to go in the lake, but I said I think it needs to be attached a little bit better on my chest. And so I went into the cardiac unit and was going to get it taped on again, and they said, well, how many events have you had? And I said, oh, I'm sure I've had 4 or 5 events that it's recorded, because if you know how a Xylo patch works, when you're experiencing those symptoms, it's connected to your phone, and then you put your symptoms that you're feeling, it's recording the heartbeat, and then you're recording the symptoms, whether it's shortness of breath, dizziness, all the kind of things. And she's like, well, you recorded enough. She's like, I'm just going to take it off and send it off. And so we sent it off, I think, on a Thursday. And then you get alerts when it arrives at the lab and all the things. And it was, we stayed an extra day Monday. Well, we came home Tuesday, and we were coming home, and they called me and they said, where are you at? And I said, well, I'm on the interstate in North Dakota. I'm going back to Iowa. And they asked me to pull over at that point I was driving. And so my daughter was fortunate. She was with us, and she could drive. And she said, you need to come immediately to the emergency room. And at that time I was doctoring with North Central Heart in Sioux Falls. So we probably had another 2-3 hour drive, I think. But I mean, it was to the point that it had recorded BTs of 210 to 255 beats a minute. And they just said, like, we don't know if you're going to survive another one of these. We've never seen BTs this high, and you're living normally. So they had even suggested they were going to come and get me with a helicopter at that point. But I just said, no, I mean, my daughter will go straight to Sioux Falls. It's on the way. So we went straight to Sioux Falls to North Central Heart. We got admitted. It was like the end of July at this point that we got admitted. And I spent a week there of just them going through things, going through tests, EKGs, echoes, and that kind of stuff. And at that point, they discovered my echo, or my EF was at 40%, which isn't a significant drop. I mean, I think normal for my age is like 55 to 60, but I mean, it was definitely decreased. Did the cardiac MRI, all that kind of stuff. And then they just basically said, for your age, something's going on. We don't know what. And if you want to leave the hospital, you need to have an ICD. So fortunately, we were able to get an ICD implanted yet Friday afternoon of that week. And then I went home Sunday and I was discharged. And then you live with, not exactly knowing what's going on. But ironically enough, when I was doctoring at my local hospital, there was a short period of time where we were connecting these episodes to like an anxiety attack. But, obviously after the BT showed themselves, it was obviously a heart situation. And that's kind of hard for people because I don't know how your events or other BTs, but they can seem like a panic attack or an anxiety attack. And so it's just difficult to be able to say, is it just me overreacting or am I really having issues? But anyways, I was working with a PA at my local hospital. And that week that I was in Sioux Falls, they had a presentation done by the local college that was doing some studies into this PLN gene mutation that was prevalent amongst the Dutch ancestry. And I am as Dutch as they come. And the location that this gene mutation was being found was in Friesland, which is where my mom's side of the family came from. My dad's family is from the Netherlands too, but the bells and whistles were going off in her head because she was listening to this student talk about the symptoms and everything, and she was like, "Boy, this is Leah. I mean, this is what." So she actually took the initiative to call up to Sioux Falls when I was in North Central Heart, and she said, "I think she should be genetically tested because I just have a suspicion here that this might be what she was dealing with." And so at that point, I didn't know that connection, but they did that. Well, in September, the geneticist called me and she said, "Yes, you are positive for the PLN gene and the gene mutation, and that is likely what's causing, part of this heart thing to happen." So, that was, tough news, obviously, because it's so new. I joined some support groups. I joined some, there's actually a gal that actually runs the U.S. group, lives in Florida. She has it too. She's done a really good job of educating people. But I just feel like I had 2 pregnancies that were pretty traumatic with hypertension or toxemia is the old word. They call it HELP syndrome now. And my heart was never evaluated after that point. So I don't know if there was some damage done there. And then I ended up having a pretty severe infection. And when I was in North Central Heart that week, they did uncover some myocarditis too. So I had an infection around my heart. So I can't say that. I think it was unfortunately a little bit of a perfect storm. I don't know if it's the gene mutation probably definitely made my heart weaker and more susceptible. But I think there could be some outlying things that pushed it to the point that a transplant was probably needed. But we got out of the hospital in July of 22 and things were relatively uneventful. December of 22, we went to Canada again for a Christmas trip because we spent Christmas there. And we had some illness in the family. And so on our way home, it was like everybody wanted to be in their own beds. They just wanted to go. And it's about a 10-hour trip. And there wasn't a lot of stopping because the kids weren't feeling good. And so we just kind of went and just didn't stop much at all. And turns out I got home that night, laid in my bed, and my husband was out watching TV. And then he came into the bedroom and I started talking about the wind because it was really windy and stormy. I think we were trying to beat a storm too. And he said he couldn't understand what I was saying. And my face was drooping. And it was apparent that I had had a stroke, probably related to lack of movement in the car. the lower AF. I mean, that was just kind of a byproduct of. So we back in the hospital, and unfortunately, with the process of getting a brain MRI and getting evaluated, we didn't actually get a confirmation that was. They called it a TIA for a little bit, just a mini stroke. But then by March of 23, the MRI results came back, and they said I had a subacute stroke in the right side of my brain. That, was just related to the fact that I didn't move enough in that trip. And so I learned that the hard way. And then the following week, we were getting ready to go to a volleyball game, and I kind of leaned up against the counter, and I had just a pain shoot from kind of my hip down to my leg. And very unusual. And I was associating with a sciatic nerve pain. And so I took some Advil and I kind of put some warm patch on my back. And then we went to the volleyball game, came back, and I sat down on the couch, and I must have had my pajamas on or something because I didn't have socks on. And my husband looked at my one foot and he said, "Your foot doesn't look like it. You look like it's not the right color." And I just didn't think too much of it. I put my feet up, maybe thought they were swollen. Well, the next morning I woke up and I couldn't stand on the foot. Pretty much, it was horrible, horrible pain. Called the ambulance, and I ended up having a DVT clot. I had several clots in the leg that had formed. And I had a little helicopter ride out of our local hospital to Sioux Falls because I had no pulse in my right foot. It had cut off, the blood flow to that foot. And so North Central Heart does that work too. So I was there on the opposite side of the unit for the vascular, went straight into the cath lab, and they took care of that. And it took close to 24 hours before a pulse regained in my foot. And I was very lucky to be able to keep my foot because, for a while there, they weren't getting a pulse. So all related again to that pumping, that heart function. And I mean, ironically, my EF was still showing in that time. It was in the 50s. So, I mean, it still wasn't totally had it decreased. But still, all related. And so things obviously were becoming a little bit more, we were more concerned about how many of these events that I had. It just seemed like every other month something was going on. And then November, we were away from home, and I received my first shock, my ICD shock. I just remember being pretty weak, and I was walking, and I just felt like, I don't know if I can get to that other point. And I kind of got there, leaned up against the wall. My daughter held on to me because she could see that I wasn't feeling good, and she got shocked too.
I was going to ask that because I've been told that, if those things go off and someone's holding you or touching you, they're going to get a little zap out of it too.
Yes. And when you have those ICDs, you're always like, you're thankful it's there, but boy, you're not sure what it's going to feel like. And I kept being told it's like a donkey kick. And I will say that it's a donkey kick. I mean, it threw me up against the wall. It works. and so that was my only shock, fortunately. But then at that point, North Central Heart had said, you know what, I think we're going to, we would encourage you to get a second opinion up in Mayo because there's just too many boxes are being checked here. And we think that maybe you should seek some care up there. And so in January, we headed up there. And then unfortunately, before we even got to Mayo, I think we didn't get to Mayo till the second week in January. I had also another symptom with the heart function, had some bleeding, some uterine bleeding that we just couldn't get stopped. Just heavy, heavy, heavy bleeding. And there was a point that I woke up one morning and I collapsed because I was just losing so much blood. And so again in the ambulance, and then headed up to Sioux Falls, and ended up having an ablation, a uterine ablation, and then had some fibroids removed. And at that point had got 6 units of blood because I had so much blood loss. And my hemoglobin, I think it got under 5. It was just ridiculous. It was pretty tough.
Now, up until this time, had anyone mentioned at all you'd probably be heading towards a transplant, or was that never discussed until you got up to Rochester?
No, it was, no, I don't think North Central. I mean, I think when you have a heart that's not functioning at its best, I think they just thought that, at that point that medications, rhythm medications, there wasn't really talk of it, honestly. And then when we got up to Mayo, the second week in January, I was feeling much better after having that blood stuff all taken care of. And my first appointment up there, they're like, you know what? You definitely have some stuff going on, but he's like, I really think we can adjust some meds. And they just did not think that transplant was a conversation yet. And that was January of 24. They just said, we have a lot of tools in our toolbox. That's one of the things that I know a lot of the doctors say up there, and it is true. And so they adjusted some medication and felt really good about the workup and the care, and headed back home. And then in April, how did that work? In April, we did a cardiac ablation. That's what they did. They ended up, because they watched my rhythms, because I had the ICD in it and got it connected to Mayo so they could watch my rhythms. And from January to April, like off that, they just constantly were adjusting medications. And that was kind of hard because I think I was on amiodarone.
Yeah, that's one of the, I was on that for a while. Yeah, I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so it's so hard because you don't want to take too much because it makes you tired, but you have to take enough to keep that rhythm in check. And so that was a big balance during that time. And then, I think they just saw too much rhythm issues. And so they said, I think that we should move ahead with an ablation, a cardiac ablation. And so, decided, and that ablation situation is there's so many, I don't know what you want to call, there's so many different, how they do it. You can have little ones inpatient, I think, or outpatient. That's 20, 25 minutes that they do. And mine ended up lasting 8 hours.
Oh, wow. That was a long, yeah.
Yeah. And so when they came out of that cardiac ablation, unfortunately, they told my husband, they're like, when we did that, we just uncovered too much damage. Like the mapping and the different things that they tried to do. They said, I think that we better start the transplant workup. And that ablation was, I feel like that was a more traumatic event for me than the heart transplant almost. Like I think I had, I think what they determined later is my chest tube was not placed correctly. And so it caused some angina, and that was painful. I had so much pain following surgery. It was very, very rough.
Now, what year was,
once they pulled it.
Now, what year
that was in April of 2024. So we're getting close. So once they removed that chest tube, that relieved a lot of my pain. But for anybody that gets in that position, that's probably something to look at. If some people come out of it fine and it's not a big deal, but that was pretty tough. But anyway, so that was April. It was the beginning of April, and they came out and they did actually some of my transplant workup following that ablation, because they just said, well, you're up here anyways, let's start having the conversation. So I kind of filled out some of the forms, and yeah, that was kind of a fog. I mean, because that was the first time that we're like, yep, it's got to be done.
And
so,
how did everybody feel? How was your family? How did they take that news? Because everybody's a little bit different, but I know when somebody does say you're going to need a transplant or you need a transplant, all sorts of things go off in not only your mind, but also your family's mind.
Yeah, I would say that there was shock. I think that there was definitely shock, but in the same breath, honestly, it was getting to the point where I was no longer working because of how I was feeling. And I think they were just getting more concerned about my health. And I think when you get to that transplant point, I mean, it's that or that, I mean, there's not really an alternative. Right. And then I think my husband initially, I think he was just so impressed with the doctors up there and the communication, and it just seemed like a no-brainer. Like that was just what we had to do to move forward. We just, had to do it that way. And so it was different for everybody. My oldest daughter turned into major support. I mean, she was just very good at, she was still trying to do college, which I don't know how she managed to do all that. But she was right in there. And then unfortunately, my youngest daughter just kind of tuned out. It was too hard. She had seen me sick enough, and she had seen me in the hospital enough times that it was just too hard for her. And I think she kind of blocked things out for a little while. But we can talk about that later. I mean, where from now, where she's processed and the things she's done with that experience have been so good for her, but it just took some time.
I think maybe, I don't know if it's because the younger one, but I kind of had the same thing. Of course, my son was married, starting a family of his own, and my daughter was still in high school. So yeah, it was quite traumatic for her, and or he covered it up well. My son handled it much better than my daughter. So yeah, it's funny how different people handle when they hear that, mama or dad is going to need a transplant.
Well, and it just, it was starting to affect, she runs track, she plays volleyball, basketball. So she's a very demanding schedule. And when I was starting to not be able to be at those events, she kind of really had to focus in on that, on just trying to do that without that support system. And she did amazing. I feel we look back, and the things she accomplished in that year was crazy for how sick I was. She did very well, but I think she just, changed her focus and focused on the things that maybe she could control a little bit more. And there's just too many questions in my situation, I think for her at that time, but everybody deals with it differently. But it's a pretty sweet ending to her process of where she is now with it. And I'll cover that later. But, so yeah, we went home, and then I was on, Eliquis because of that blood clot. And so I had to switch from Eliquis to warfarin. So that took the better part of April. And then May, the beginning of May, I have May 6th down. I think in my last interview, I said the 10th, but May 6th was when I was officially listed with Mayo as far as my blood was where it needed to be. And they listed me as a status 3, but they said it was a status 3 with an exception. Now I'm a little bit concerned about if it's status 3 or status 4. I think you can be out of the hospital with status 3, right? Do you remember the status?
See, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't even know what status I was on, but I do know that They told me every time, because I was on an IV drip that was even at home. But when they would bring me into the hospital, they would put me on a swan where, they can control, the heart and get all the pressures and everything. And they did tell me, because my insurance would allow me to come into the hospital for like 10 days. And then I had to go back home. And it was either my second or third trip that I had to the hospital. And it was my final day. My wife was going to come get me the next morning to take me home for another like 10 days and then bring me back. But they came into my room in the middle of the night and said, you're getting a heart tomorrow. We found one for you. And so but I don't know I know this sounds bad, especially for somebody doing a podcast like this, but I don't know what status I was, but I know they said, being in the hospital on the swan and the drip at home, I was in a much higher status than if it was just status quo.
So I did look it up, and I would have been status 4 because I was still able to be at home.
Okay.
So status 3 is hospitalized. So status 4, but then they said it had an exception on it because because this PLN gene is so new, and they didn't know the speed of the degeneration, how fast things were going to degenerate. So that helped me. Maybe I was a 3.5 then, but so I think that did help me because May 6th is the official listing date, and I got the call on June 9.
Oh, wow. So that was awesome.
Not even a month. Yeah, not even a month. And that was quite something because that month of May, then my daughter ran state track. And so I didn't go to that because I had to be close enough to Mayo too. So stayed home and watched that online, which was wonderful. My parents came and stayed with me. So we got through that. We got through the end of school. And then, June 9, I tell this story because God never, ever, ever left me, has never left me in my whole life. But he was a constant reminder that he had this all in his hands. And that Sunday that I got the call, before I knew we were going to get the call, I had a friend over. And she said, let's just sit outside and just catch up and pray. And because at that point we knew it was coming. And she's like, let's just spend some time together. She's one of my best friends. And so we did that. And I bet it was 2 hours that we sat out there on the patio. And right about 4:00, my body trembled from my head to my toes. It was a feeling that I'll never forget. And I just kind of shook, and I was like, I didn't say anything at the moment, but I was like, that's a not weird feeling. So then she left about, an hour later or so. And then we live very close to Pizza Hut. So the family wanted pizza. So I ran down to Pizza Hut, picked up the pizza, I pulled in my garage, and then the phone call, I saw the 507 area code, and that's Mayo. And I said, wow, here we go. And so
what was that?
The pizza on the oven, and
what was that feeling like when you got the call? I mean, because I remember, when the nurse came in and told me, tomorrow's the day, we found your heart and the surgery will be tomorrow morning. In myself, personally, I was relieved and happy. I called my wife. She was upset and, oh my God, I can't believe it. Maybe she wasn't as excited as I was because she was afraid of, the outcome could have been bad. But as I remember me, I was just as tickled as could be, like, all right, let's do this and get it over with.
Well, and I think I hear that a lot from people like you who's lived with it your whole life, right?
Yeah.
Or several years. My brain and my mental side had not caught up yet. I mean, it was just, we got to do this. I mean, it was just, let's go. I didn't have, years and years of things that I was like, I can't wait till this happens. I was still like, I can't believe we're doing this. So it was a weird feeling. And there was no question, but let's go. I mean, I had my bags packed. Obviously, they tell you to do that. But I still don't know if there was much. I can't reflect on what that felt like, in that moment, because I'm just like, we got to keep going. And this is what, this opportunity. And if this is going to make me feel better, let's go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, got everybody packed in the vehicle. My oldest daughter was down in southeastern Iowa at her now fiance, place. And so they hopped in their vehicle and headed up to Rochester, and my parents and some siblings in Canada, they jumped in their vehicle, and we kind of all, just headed to Rochester. And we got into Rochester about 11 o'clock that night, and admitted me, and they just started doing like small workup things, kind of just getting me in the hospital and stuff, paperwork and stuff. And then the next morning, I can't remember. It actually might have been Sunday night. Yes, one of the weirdest things. In order to stop, again, that I think it was an effort to stop the blood thinner, I was given vitamin K, and I had anaphylactic. I went into anaphylactic shock. What's that vitamin K? So out came the EpiPen, and in my thigh, that was scary, because I was like, I'm ready for a heart transplant. I'm not ready to have my throat swell and my eyes close. And it was just bizarre. It was just weird that I reacted that way. But anyways, they shut that down right away and got that back to where it needed to be. And then at 7 o'clock, I think my family came in between 6 and 6:30 or something. And we had a couple friends come up too that were with our group. A friend and her husband that had been with me on the patio, they came up too. And we just sat in the room and we sang a couple songs, some hymns, and then we prayed. And I looked at them and I just said, this is out of my hands and into God's hands. And I had a comfort. I could see the look in their eyes that they were scared, but I had comfort through the whole process that whatever it was going to be was going to be. I was scared for my family if it wasn't going to turn out the way that they wanted it to do, but that comfort was there with me the whole time. I still don't know how. And we've talked about that a lot in my group of transplant friends, and Mayo has said too in their conversations that they don't really know of many people that go through the transplant process without a comfort or a hope in a higher being, because it is such a miraculous, and especially with a heart, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Obviously with a liver or a kidney or something, it's not very often life ending, but got a lot of friends that have had lung transplants. You just know that it could be two ways. It's a 50-50. And so into surgery we went, and it was quite something, because I think I went in around 7 o'clock or whatever, and they called my husband already by noon. And I don't know how long yours took, but when my husband got that call and they asked him to come to the hospital, he was quite concerned that it didn't go well, because it just happened so fast. And so they tell a story of almost running from the hotel over to St. Mary's. And I don't know how big the room was, but they met the doctor in the room, and the doctor kind of laughed and made the comment. He says, "Boy, you brought everybody with you, didn't you?" Because I guess it was like standing room only. And the doctor said, that transplant went perfect. It went as perfect as you could think of. And in fact, he said, if you weren't in the room and didn't see it happen, I probably couldn't explain it any more perfectly. Like I was barely on the
heart and lung machine, maybe
bypass. Yeah, I was barely on the bypass, and they said when they put that heart in, it just took off right away.
Now, see, the same thing happened to me, and they said that doesn't happen that often. They said they took the clips off, and usually they need to give it a little shock. No shock was needed. They put it in, and boom, there it went.
Yep. And that's exactly what happened in my situation. And we'll be able to tell you why that heart is why it is when I tell you the other side of the story, because there's a reason why it's that strong, because my donor was that strong and she was absolutely amazing. But so June 10th, the heart transplant happened. I think for the most part, my stay was rather normal. I was in the hospital for 16 days following the transplant. I can't really say there was anything that was out of the usual in my situation. I mean, they watched my kidneys had a hard time coming back. I think I do remember that. So that might have extended my stay a little bit. But once they came back, then they released me. So, but unfortunately, I think I got out of the hospital and I was readmitted for psychosis. That's the part of the story that I don't like telling, because it was very, very difficult for my family. And I mean, I could remember bits and pieces of it, but that's something that I wasn't prepared for. And I think a lot of when we talk about it in our group and the social workers talk about it in our group, lots of times if people are in the hospital awaiting transplant, there's a lot more education offered to say, okay, this could happen. And it sounds like when people are educated about the possibility of a psychosis, that they're able to reason it a lot better and they can get through it a lot better because they know what's happening and they can say, okay, I know this isn't what's happening. I just have to, get through it. But I think it was a combination of medication colliding, pain medicine colliding. But I was readmitted for a couple days. And a couple days is pretty reasonable. I mean, I know friends that had to stay there for a week, to get through it. But that's the part of transplant that was not as much of a miracle.
Now, I'm gonna play dummy here because that's the first time I've heard of this. So now what actually are you talking about? Maybe I'll say this is why, because, like I said, I was in and out of the hospital quite a bit and knew it was coming, for a while, and had been sick all my life too. So that's another piece of the deck. Explain to me.
It was just psychosis. I was seeing things I shouldn't be seeing. I was talking about things. I thought that I could heal people. I mean, I thought that I was an angel at one point, that I was thinking about all my sick friends and how I had the power to heal them. It's bizarre. I can't even, those are just some of the pieces I remember about it. But, I think people were visiting me that weren't visiting me. It wasn't violent.
Yeah, I'm understanding now. Now I had some of that
out of body.
That was after my transplant. I mean, my kidney transplant more than my heart, because I don't remember any of that for my heart transplant. But my kidney transplant, I don't know what it was, but some of the drugs just did not mix. And I was somewhat of a crazy, I was somewhat of a crazy person. And I think I was somewhat of a crazy person right after my heart transplant, but it didn't last long. It was like there and maybe 24 hours. And then I was pretty much back to me.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, mine was probably closer to 48, but people need to be aware of that, because I mean, some people get it much worse than others and some people don't get it at all. It just kind of depends on.
I think it's your body makeup and how you handle, because a lot of people that haven't had a transplant or know that much about our world, when you first have a transplant, and you remember this, they bring in a tackle box of pills and they go, okay, you take these at lunchtime, you take these at nighttime. And you take that many drugs and you mix them together in the right body chemistry, it's definitely going to throw you off because, like I said, it was like a treasure chest of pills. And the coordinator came in and said, and you're like, what? And I'd been taking pills all my life and I still went, what?
Yeah. I think I remember counting 31 pills that I took for a long time. I mean, the better part of that first 3 months for sure. And now I'm down to, I think 12 or 13. So, it's hard for them to know what, triggering it. But anyways, they got it figured out. They let me go. But yeah, there's a lot of embarrassing moments there, but unfortunately they see it all the time and they don't hold it against you. And
your loved ones won't hold it against you either. They'll say, wow, it was what it was.
Yeah. And I don't even honestly like to joke about it because it's just that embarrassing, but it's the education of it happening. And, you're going to talk to one of my friends, I think next week that he had it much worse than me. And so it's not unusual, but yeah, it's good to be aware that can happen and make sure that they'll take care of you when it happens, that you're in the right hands and stuff. And as long as your loved ones know the signals of when it's time to go in and get care. But after that, it was just, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, so that was June 10th of 2024. Here we are in 2026. How are things going?
Good. Like the recovery went pretty good. I did have a portion of my incision open that ended up getting a little bit of an infection in. So I did have to go back into surgery, I think in July of that year, just to get that cleaned out. And then we had to pack it and go on some IV medications. But that could happen too. But that was probably the only thing that was kind of like out of the norm per se for my recovery. But yeah, otherwise I stayed in Rochester I only ended up, I probably shouldn't say this because I don't want everybody to think it's going to happen to them, but I convinced Rochester to let me go after 2 months because I was feeling pretty good. My kids were starting school and I just wanted to be back for that. And my appointments by then were only weekly. And so we could drive back and forth. So that's what we were fortunate to be able to do. So I came home at the beginning of August. End of August, sorry. And then for those following months, we had to go every week for checkups. And that worked nice. It was nice just to be in my own bed and function a little bit more normally and stuff. So that was really good. And now it's just, my biggest aggravance is probably retaining water, and it's all medication related. Unfortunately, like between the rejection medication and I did sustain, and I don't know if it was part of a transplant or other surgeries, but I did sustain a little bit of nerve damage. And so on the side of my face, I have a little bit of nerve pain and stuff that I'm doctoring for. And some of those drugs have not helped with the water retention, but it's just a balance. I mean, we're figuring it out as we go, and Mail's really good at, if you just communicating to them and saying, this doesn't feel right. Do we have other options? And so just kind of fine tuning those medications to make it so that you can function as normal of a life as you can. So
good deal. Now you're mentioning your daughter, and there's a moment you were mentioning we're going to learn about. What were you talking about? Yeah. And let's learn about that.
Okay. Well, first, how much time do we have, BJ?
We're coming up on about 10 minutes, but we'll get it in here.
Okay. Well, the thing that when I talk about that heart, I want to go back to that for a little bit, but that heart I was able to connect with my donor family. And that's a part of my story that I know is unique, a huge blessing. And I know there's a lot of people out there that wish that they could make that connection with their donor, and it doesn't always happen. And I have a very special relationship. I wrote my letter a month after transplant, and received a letter back already a month later, and was able to, the family shared her whole memorial service with me, the video of her memorial service, her obituary. I mean, I've gotten to know a lot about Melissa and the woman she was, and she was a very strong, resilient person, and that's why that heart is so incredibly strong and has been so good. And we're fortunate to have group chats, and we've had a couple Zoom calls during the holidays and stuff. At first, I just made connections with her dad, her mom and dad, and then the sisters. And she has 3 sons. One that was in the accident that took her life, and that was an area that I wanted to be very careful when I, built that relationship or opened that connection up. And I kind of relied on the family to know when that was a good time to start that process. And actually, it happened on my birthday following the 1-year anniversary of my heart transplant. The 1-year anniversary was our first Zoom call. It was difficult to know how to gift them or thank them for that. And so that was my gesture, was to have like a visual meeting, a virtual meeting. And that really opened up a lot of support and friendships and care. And yeah, it's pretty amazing. But then the boys were not on that call. And then they spent some time with their grandparents over the summer. And then I think it was in August, right near my birthday, the 10th of August, that her dad reached out and said, the boys are here and they would like to meet you. And so that's been awesome. I mean, they are strong boys. One's going to finish high school here shortly. And then there's a couple younger ones that are doing very well. I mean, I'm sure that they have days that are still very hard, but it's been really nice to try to build a relationship with them and just try to offer some care, support, love when I can. And so that's been really, really special. And they have interest of coming to my daughter's wedding in August. So we're hoping to meet in person. So that will be very special, because obviously I would not have been able to experience that if it wasn't for her. So looking forward to that. But when we talk about that moment that I felt that shake on the port, when we had that Zoom meeting in June on my 1-year anniversary, then I had explained to them that feeling, of when I felt that something big was going to happen. And her, one of the sisters called me or texted me following that Zoom meeting and said that she looked back on her phone, and about 4:00 is when the Donor Alliance rep sent them a recording of Melissa's heart when it was still part of her. And that was about the time that the family was told that a match had been found and that her heart was going to be able to be donated to somebody. So that was pretty significant, that timing and that connection. And because they were pretty worried going to be able to find a match, because she had an antibody in her blood that kind of made it the selection a little bit more fine. And I had picked that up in that blood transfusion that I got in January. So it was just a perfect match. So I was very fortunate, because she was in Colorado. And so that heart was transported, what they say, in a box up to Rochester. So yeah, it's a significant part of my story. And I think a lot of the part of my story that I get my strength from and my resiliency just to keep moving and keep going.
You know,
I think.
When you do meet them, I would have a very interesting question for you. Maybe we can do maybe you can check in with me again after. But I've talked to probably 3 or 4 donor mothers already on this podcast. And one of the most amazing things that they've done is after they've met the recipient, they've heard their child's heartbeat in another human being. Yeah. And they've always told me that side of the story. But I would love, after you meet, and if that does happen, I would love to hear because I've never heard that side of the story. But I've always heard from the mother. I would love to hear your side of the story by witnessing that and that feeling that, you know, they're hearing it.
Yeah. And when I do my checkups and I get my echoes done, I often record the heart and I send it to them. So I do that quite often on my checkups. I do think it would be fun. It would be good to check in because, you know, one thing that her dad is just very passionate about is he wants people to understand the value of this relationship, because I think there's a lot of families out there that the grief is just too much to think of trying to support, you know, the other side of it. Mm-hmm. But they have a lot of value in this relationship, and they would just really encourage these donor families to make sure that they're open to offer that relationship. And I know that he'd love to talk to you about that too.
I'd love to hear from him. Yeah. Because I hear from the donor mothers so much, and it's like their legacy of their child is living on now through you. At least that seems to be the census I get from mothers, that my child is still living like through Leah. Yep. And that's just such an awesome thing to know that the parents feel that.
Yeah. And so they, and you know what, I'm very transparent with them. I mean, they know this journey, you know, and transplant people will say that all the time. Transplant is not a cure. It's a trade-off. You know, I mean, we still have quite a journey to get through these medications. You know, there's lots of talk of refining that and getting that better. And I hope that it does, because the side effects of this medication are pretty tough at times to deal with. But again, you get another day to live, another month to live, another year to live. So it is so worth it.
Going to see your daughter's wedding.
So worth it. Right. Yeah. And so, but they are just so good at picking me up when I can get down. And it's just, and knowing how she was just such an awesome person as far as just chasing life, that I just need to continue to chase life for her, because she never stopped. I mean, she traveled all the time, and she was part of a lot of organizations to help people and to encourage people. And so she's a driving force. There's no doubt in my mind, you know, about how that all works. But
I have another couple that had their donor and loved to travel. And so they do a lot of traveling, and they always take her picture with them. So they always send that back to the family also. Well, look, we all went to here or here. And so, yeah.
Well, last year would have been her 50th birthday party, and she loved her girlfriends. Like she loved people around her and her girlfriends. And so I took a bunch of my girlfriends, and we all went out for supper. She always liked to, I've seen a lot of pictures of her, like in the Napa Valley. She loved out in California. And so we just found a little local vineyard and got together and had a really nice supper and walked the vineyard. And so we tried to celebrate that and send pictures to the family of that. But when you talk about the traveling, I joke that I don't need to travel because she's done it all. I mean, in her in her obituary, she's whitewater rafted. She's on the Zambia River. She's hiked Isles of Patagonia, and she's cliff jumped in Zambia. She's ziplined in Costa Rica. And yeah, she's done a lot of things already that I don't need to do. There's a lot of bucket list items there that she took care of for me. So,
right.
But no, I hope to, when I'm still working, so I hope that once I retire that we can do a little bit more of that traveling. But
let's oh, never mind. I'm sorry. Keep talking.
No, when we're trying to circle around to processing and my daughter and even me, this is the first year now, almost 2 years, where I've done more talking about it. I did quite a bit in the month of April just to promote Donate Life and the value of it. I sent that radio piece that I did in our local. Last year, I wrote a letter to the editor, just the importance of organ donation. And this past year, my daughter came home, and I knew she had been asking me some different questions about, my heart transplant and everything, but she ended up writing a pretty big on organ transplant and the importance of it. And just the fact that she connected the fact that, yeah, she checked that box when she got her driver's license, but to just think how important it was that box so her mom could live. And so what I'm saying is she's doing a lot of processing now with it. And she's getting to the age where she's looking at her career and she wants to be in the medical field. And she specifically has an interest in diagnostic cardiac sonography. So doing echoes and learning about the heart. And so it's just so full circle, and it's at a pace that was right for her. And I respect that because that's a huge load on kids to kind of walk through that. And so she's confident, and I know she can bring a lot of her experience to patients and probably relate with them a lot better than somebody that doesn't have a close experience like that. And so, yeah, I'm very proud of how far she's come and how she kind of that full circle of being involved, because for a long time there, I didn't know if she could, step into a hospital on her own accord to serve in a hospital just because of some of the stuff that she had experienced. So there's all parts of it that add up for sure. So.
Awesome. Well, anything we may have missed as we do start to get short on time here? Anything else you want to pass along to people, or anything maybe we missed that you really want to make sure we get out there? I'm going to give you the floor and give you an opportunity.
Okay. I just think finding that support system is just so important, because it is an experience that not anybody if you haven't had a heart transplant, you're not going, or any type of organ transplant, it's going to be difficult to relate to anybody else that hasn't gone through it. And I, through Mayo, we have different support groups that offer that kind of support. And then you just get to know people. And I mean, I talk to some of those friends 2-3 times a week. And we can just level with each other, on how we're feeling. And, we've been fortunate over the 2 years. Everybody, for the most part, is doing very well. I know we've got some that are waiting. And so that's hard to watch them, get discouraged. But one thing that we learned in the month of April that just blew me away is that only 3 in 1,000 deaths, so any death, whether it's of age, accident, whatever, only 3 out of every 1,000 deaths essentially are eligible to donate organs. So, I mean, that's why the wait is what it is. When you think of organ transplant, you just think that they should be more available, that people aren't necessarily agreeing to donate the organs, but it's more just the how it happens to make sure that there's an eligible organ for transplant. But just getting that support system is huge, because my family loves me dearly, but there's points that I can't, talk to them about how I'm feeling or the things I'm going through, just because they just haven't gone through it. So just make sure you have that, because it's a journey and you need that support system. And this podcast is that's a huge part of that support system too. And I really, really appreciate what you've done with this. And I've listened to many, many, many stories and picked up information and, stuff that I've even brought to my doctors and said, well, what about this? Like, I've heard this was successful, or have you heard anybody dealing with this? Because so-and-so, I learned about this. I mean, it's good to have that dialogue with your provider and make sure that there's no changes that can be made and stuff. But yeah, plenty of websites out there. Donate Life website is huge. Lots of resources there, and just support yourself in the journey, for sure.
Thank you so much, Leah, for sharing your story with us today on the Gift of Life podcast. And be sure to join us each week for a new heartfelt episode. If you have a transplant story, please email us, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, and also don't forget to like and share this episode with family and friends. And we would appreciate your 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, my memoir, More Parts Than a Chicken Nugget, isn't just a medical story. It's a story of my life. It's a survival story filled with humor, hope, and heart. It'll make you laugh, maybe cry, and definitely believe in second chances. Get yours now, available on Amazon. More Parts Than a Chicken Nugget. Another podcast you might enjoy is myself and my former radio partner, Bill Stevens. BJ and Bill, the podcast, all on the Podcast Playground Network. And we want to thank them for making this podcast possible. Until next time, I'm BJ Odom. Thank you for being a part of our journey and reminding us all to appreciate each and every day and to treasure the extraordinary gift of life.
He was running on empty, heart fading fast. Doctor said, man, you ain't gonna last. But a stranger's kindness, a gift so true, turned the night sky into something new. He got a second chance, he got a brand new spark. Like a freight train rolling back from the dark. Gift of life, let the story be told. One heart beats, another takes hold. Give a little, save a soul. Ain't no greater rock and roll. 15 years later, the road got rough. The fight ain't over when the climb is tough. Needed a kidney, the race was on. Another hero stepped up, kept him strong. Every breath he takes is a tale of hope. One life saved, another can cope. Gift of life, let the story be told. One heart beats, another takes hold. Give a little, save a soul. Ain't no greater rock and roll. Doctor's hands, a donor's grace, running on down to a brand new place. Second chances don't come twice, but when they do, man, they feel so nice. So let's spread the word, let the people know. One yesterday lets a miracle grow. You don't need wings just to save a man, just a little love, a helping hand. Gift of life. life. Let the story be told. One heart beats, another takes hold. Give a little, save a soul. Ain't no greater rock and roll. BJ still rocking, still standing tall. Thanks to the ones who gave it all. Gift of life, hear the sound. Pass it on, pass it down. The Gift of Life podcast hosted by BJ Odom. Listen now.